Hello everyone, welcome to my very own ghost tour of South London. We are in London now and we're going to travel 500 years back, and we are going to take a walk through the scariest. Well, you might be thinking that London is just Big Ben, Houses of Parliament, Tower Bridge. No, London is this. And we are about 20 miles from London in the charming borough of Surrey and in the town of Wellington. I'm standing behind one of the oldest churches in the borough. This is the Church of St. Mary. It was built, some people say, on the spot by William the Conqueror, the Frenchman who came here and conquered this country. Well, you might have gathered, I am a foreign person as well. Let me introduce myself. I am the Royal Executioner, and of course, I am a ghost. So the best place to see ghosts, ladies and gentlemen, where else? Of course, in the graveyards. And behind me you can see some. Well, the graveyard is not as old as myself because I'm 500 years old. But this is the Victorian one, built here about 200 years ago. However, we are not going to travel through Victorian London. We're going to travel through Henry VIII, and the church I'm touching right now is the Church of St. Mary. This graveyard is haunted by the ghost of Sir Walter Raleigh. So what we're going to do, we're going to walk through the most haunted places in Surrey. I don't know if you believe in ghosts. I hope you do. And I'm going to show you the sightings of some hauntings. And of course, I'm going to tell you my own story, the story of the Royal Executioner. Well, first of all, it's not just a walk, it's also about our interaction. So I'm going to ask you some questions. Don't worry, you won't be executed for not answering these questions. However, if you want to win a little reward, press on the link, make some donation. Our tours are free, but the donations are voluntary. Answer my questions, and your name will be entered in the name of people taking place in the competition. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, as you might have gathered, I came from abroad. I'm French. And my name is, maybe I shouldn't say my name because I'm the Royal Executioner. Well, how can you understand I'm the Royal Executioner? Well, very easy. This is all rubbish. I'm going to take it off now. Wait a second. No, it's no good. Look at this. This is the thing the Royal Executioner is wearing, the spiky thing. And if you don't believe me, you might want to go to the National Gallery and you might want to see this picture. This is the picture of Hieronymus Bosch. And if you look at the neck of the person who's holding Christ, he's wearing the same thing that I am wearing. That's the side of Royal Executioner. I have another sign, but I'm going to show it to you later. Well, maybe. Okay, first of all, let's just take a little walk around this place. I'm going to turn the camera away from me. Just having said I am the executioner, I can't introduce me by name because we executioners usually work anonymously, okay? And I was bestowed 500 years ago an honor to behead Sir Walter Raleigh. Sir Walter Raleigh was the pirate of Queen Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen. So he was executed on one of these miserable winter days, just like today. It's about 4 degrees centigrade here. Sorry, I'm no good with Fahrenheit. And he was taken to Tower Hill back in London, about 20 miles away from here. And I came there and I chopped his fine head off. So this is how Walter Raleigh died. Well, why did I bring you here? Because this place that we're going to look at now, this graveyard is haunted, one moment, is haunted by the head of Sir Walter Raleigh. We are now in Carew Manor. Take a look. The lands of Carew Manor were bestowed to Sir Nicholas Carew, and that happened 500 years ago. And if you look hard, you might be able to spot the head of its owner. Well, you have to look very hard. I'm looking at the church building, and if I take a look on the window, I will see, and hope you can see as well, a little window and 2 heads on both sides. So the first head is the head of Sir Nicholas Carew, who was the owner of this place, about 20 miles away from Big Ben, from central London. And the second head is a female head. So this is the head of Elizabeth Throckmorton. We will come back to Elizabeth Throckmorton a little later. So Nicholas Carew, he was the owner of this land, given it by King Henry VIII. Well, King Henry VIII was one of the most amazingly known English kings. I hope you can appreciate him now. This is him being elderly 52-year-old, because he passed away when he was 53. And this is his family. So if you take a look, it's him in the middle. On the right hand side you can see his favorite wife, one of his 6 wives, Jane Seymour, and on the right hand side you can see his son, and the name of his son, the future King of England, Edward VI. Okay, so what has this beautiful place got to know with him, with King Henry VIII? Well, you might know that King Henry VIII was a great womanizer. He was married 6 times, and I'm just trying to show you his picture again. This is him in all his glory. You can see it in London. So his first wife was called Catherine of Aragon, as she was Spanish, and his second wife was called Anne Boleyn. And I'm going to show you the house that King Henry VIII used for his love story with Anne Boleyn. King Henry VIII, in 1533, he passionately wanted to have a male heir, but his wife, her name was Catherine of Aragon, he wouldn't give him the male heir. So he set up a relationship with a lady called Anne Boleyn from a very noble Boleyn family. And that was exactly the place where King Henry would meet with his second wife, Anne Boleyn. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the story was so sad. Why was it so sad? Because they met near this church, which is just behind me, St. Mary's Church. They quarreled, and after that, King Henry VIII divorces his wife, causing a major scandal with the Roman Catholic Church, declares himself the King of England, and after that he marries Anne Boleyn. Well, Anne Boleyn unfortunately didn't give him the male heir. The only child that was given by Anne Boleyn to King Henry VIII was a little red-headed girl. Here she is. This is Queen Elizabeth I. But this house that I am showing you right now, I'm just going to remove Anne Boleyn from the camera. It's called Carew Manor, the place where they jousted, because you probably know that so Queen Anne Boleyn became the wife of King Henry VIII. Well, ladies and gentlemen, she was the wife of King Henry VIII. Just for how many years? Just for 3 years. After 3 years, she failed to produce a living male heir. And what happened? She was executed at the Tower of London. I executed her as well because, in case you didn't know, I am the royal executioner and I come from France. Most royal executioners back in my days came from France. And many years after the execution of Anne Boleyn, the building was transformed into an orphanage, yes, just behind me, and after that into a school, Carew Academy. This is a very prestigious school in the only Grade 1 listed building in Surrey. This is Carew Manor. Well, what happened to Sir Nicholas Carew? You might wonder. He was executed as well because Queen Anne Boleyn didn't produce the male heir. So this is the place where all happened. So I'm going to cross the road very carefully and I'm going to show you a place of haunting. We are looking for ghosts of London. So the daughter of King Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, her name was Elizabeth. Her name was Elizabeth. Elizabeth never married. When many people proposed to her, she would answer only one phrase, and that phrase is well known: I'm married to England. I'll try to speak up. It's a bit strange here, the connection. I'm married to England. However, she didn't marry, but she had multiple love stories. And once a young pirate, his name was Walter Raleigh, conquered Queen Elizabeth I's heart. So this is him, yes, and this is her, Queen Elizabeth. They were passionate lovers. They spent beautiful time in Greenwich, as well, far away from central London. But what happened after? Walter Raleigh met a lady from Carew, and that lady, I showed it to you a little bit before in this video. Her name was Elizabeth Throckmorton. So Elizabeth, the queen, who was the virgin queen who didn't want to marry, she decided to imprison Sir Walter Raleigh in the Tower of London. He spent 18 years in the Tower of London, but the conditions of his imprisonment were better of any five-star hotel. He had everything: servants, hot baths. 2 children were born in the Tower of London, believe it or not. Well, Elizabeth passed away because she was a little bit older than Walter Raleigh. And Walter Raleigh, he came to the King James I and said, Your Majesty, I want to go to America. I want to discover the river of gold called El Dorado. He went to America. He didn't discover the river of gold, El Dorado. And what happened? He was executed by the royal executioner. Well, just before we move from here, I just wanted to draw your attention to the stones behind me. These stones are very, very old. They are flint and they are very strong. In the Middle Ages and in Tudor times, these stones, they used to be used for illumination because they would reflect the light and they would make the building glow. Okay, so why don't we continue through the lovely English rainy day? And we are visiting South London looking for ghosts, and we are in Carew Manor. So this is the beautiful park, which is the continuation of the graveyard that we've just seen next to Carew Manor. And I'm going to go in a little bit of a muddy place, but for the sake of showing you again Carew Manor far away, which is a very prestigious school. You can see it now, the red brick building, which was of course reconstructed here. And it's not just because of this building that I brought you here, it's also because I want to show you a Celtic cross. Just bear with me one moment. So the Church of St. Mary is behind me. This is where the head of Walter Raleigh haunts. Why? He was beheaded, and his wife Elizabeth Throckmorton, she decided to steal the head of Walter Raleigh from London Bridge. London Bridge, by the way, was the place used for putting on the spike the heads of executed people, and Walter Raleigh was one of them. His head was put on the spike. So she sent some soldiers to steal the head of Walter Raleigh and to bury it in that church behind me. However, the head of her husband, Walter Raleigh, never got buried. So Walter Raleigh, the pirate of Queen Elizabeth II, his head haunts the graveyard of Carew Manor, from where his wife came. Okay, so another thing I'm going to show you is the Celtic cross. So we are in England, South England, and this is a very, very, very interesting memorial. I'll try to put the camera so you can see both. The Evangelist cross behind, and this is the Celtic cross. The Christianity came to England 1500 years ago. In 596, St. Augustine of Canterbury baptized Celtic people. So now look, the cross should be now behind me. You can see my face and you can see the cross as well. Celtic people were of pagan religion and they didn't appreciate crosses. So Celtic cross, for this reason, is made out of twigs and tree branches and flowers. This memorial is the memorial of Trollope family, which was a noble family of Victorian era, and I'm standing next to their grave. We don't know exactly where they were buried, maybe under my feet, maybe under the cross, maybe closer to the church, but the Celtic cross commemorates that. So I'm leaving Carew Manor and I'm walking a little bit further, and the next thing we're going to see here is the cross of the Evangelist, and this is another place where the haunting takes place. Well, before we say anything about the hauntings, take a look. The four evangelists, Mark, Matthew, Luke and John, they are all here. Two of them only mentioned the birth of Jesus. And this is the memorial to the girls of Carew Manor orphanage, because in the Victorian times that red building behind me, yeah, you can see it a little bit above my head, was an orphanage. So one day a big epidemic happened there, and the four girls, they left Carew Manor orphanage. They went walking in the big park. You can see the park is really enormous. It's 49 acres park, and they never arrived back. And some people think the girls died because of the epidemic that happened there. We are talking about 19th century, but the other people believe that these girls, they're still here and haunt their memorial, and of course they are still alive. So we are continuing our walk. It's quite chilly today, but we still continue. And for the people who just joined me, I'm asking some questions to you, and you have a chance of winning something interesting if you want, after contributing something on the website. And please answer my questions in the chat. And the first question is going to be right now. I am the Royal Executioner. Who was Sir Walter Raleigh? We were just talking about him. Okay, so who was Sir Walter Raleigh, whose head haunts this place? Okay. So, we are now going to talk a little bit more about this park. This is a very beautiful place. I must tell you that South London is absolutely amazing and nice place. Nice for a walk when it's good weather, of course, but we don't complain. Actually, the park we're walking in, it's not that small. It's a lot bigger. It's 148 acres. That's the size of the park, 148 acres. 148 acres park that we're walking through belonged to Nicholas Carew, who was the man who introduced Queen Anne Boleyn and King Henry VIII. Okay, as we're walking in this park, a little bit more about the Tudors. So my friend King Henry VIII was an amazing person, married 6 times. He also abolished the Roman Catholic religion in this country and proclaimed himself the head of the Church of England. He was a frequent visitor of Carew Manor when he was courting Anne Boleyn. So in 1533, Queen Anne Boleyn was accused of being an unfaithful wife to King Henry VIII. She was said to have cheated on the king with 5 men, including her own brother, believe it or not. So she was executed in the Tower of London, and her spirit comes here to this beautiful park because this was the place where she was really happy, was courting her, Anne Boleyn. So after King Henry VIII executed Anne Boleyn, his 3rd wife gave him the baby boy, and I think I might have shown you the photograph of King Henry VIII, Queen Jane Seymour, and Edward. Okay, so King Henry is the Tudor monarch. The Tudor dynasty started in England after the War of the Roses ended. So you might have heard that the Red Rose was the house of Lancaster and the White Rose was the house of York. So when the War of the Roses finished, then King Henry VII became king. So King Henry VII had 2 sons, His first son, you can see him, is Arthur, and his second son, Henry. And Arthur, he had to inherit the English crown and become the King of England. He married Catherine of Aragon, and what happened? He died during the honeymoon. The Prince Arthur and Henry became the king. This is just very quickly how King Henry VIII became the king. Okay, so we are walking on Carew Manor, and if you take a look at the trees behind me, these trees are 200 years old. This is actually the oldest trees in the Royal Borough of Sutton that I'm walking right now, and the temperature is 4 degrees. So Beddington Park used to be the land of Sir Nicholas Carew, executed by me, the royal executioner, the King Henry VIII. And just in case you're bored, the executioner is always unknown, so I don't tell you my name. You can read it in the description of this video. And the favorite method of execution in Tudor time was this one. I hope you can see it well. This is the scavenger daughter, used quite frequently by me. So what's the principle of this machine used 500 years ago in medieval England? Well, that's very, very simple. You put the head of the tortured victim in one circle, the arms, the hands in the other, and the feet in the other. In the crouched position, you can stay up to 3 hours. After 3 hours, you have vision. Poof, you faint. So this was the method of torture used by us royal executioners in London. Okay, so coming back to our story, I'm just going to remove the scavenger's daughter. Coming back to our story, we are walking through Beddington Park, and in the London Borough of Sutton there are 3 parks. Beddington is the biggest. Beddington is the biggest park. 143 acres or 43 hectares. It's a beautiful place, and we are going to walk to the river. Of course, the most interesting. Well, when somebody tells you London, the London River is the River Thames. Well, in this instance, 20 kilometers away from London, I'm not going to show you the River Thames, but I'm going to show you the River Wandle. Well, you might ask me, Sir Executioner, what has it got to do with the Ghost the River? Well, plenty of ghosts there, and I will try to show you the ghost of the royal chicken. Please don't laugh at me, because this is really the case, the ghost of the royal chicken. Well, after Queen Elizabeth passed away, we've seen her portrait a little bit before, the King of England became James I. James I suffered gunpowder plot, kind of terrorist attack, and survived. But his son, Charles I, in 1649 was executed. Well, we're not going to talk about Charles I. We are going to talk about the royal chicken. When Charles I was the king, a famous man called Francis Bacon was the royal scientist, and he was trying to research the methods of freezing meat. So once he was returning from the royal palace, driving in a carriage, talking to his doctor friend called Dr. Jones. Is it possible to preserve the meat in cold? Well, England is not particularly cold country, is it? Even if I'm freezing like now, England is not that cold. So it was winter, and on that occasion it was snowy. So Francis Bacon said, okay, let's just catch the goose, yes, and after catching the goose, we will kill it and we will bury it in the snow. And if we come tomorrow and the goose is preserved, then the cold can preserve the meat. Well, they didn't catch the goose. They went into a house of a local peasant woman and they took a chicken. They broke the chicken's neck and they buried the chicken in the snow. But after burying the chicken in the snow, Francis Bacon called it terrible cold and he was ill. So it happened in this park we are going to walk right now. I'm just going on top of the bridge and to the place where the ghost of royal chicken appears, just away from me. And take a look at this beautiful landscape of Beddington Park, the lands of Nicholas Carew. By the way, when you talk about the ghosts, I don't know if you believe in them or not. There are not just human ghosts, but very often the appearance of black dog is a premonition of something bad about to happen. Well, nothing bad will happen because we have this now. Look at that. So we are nice and happy. Okay, so I'm going to ask you another question in a moment while you are enjoying the view of Beddington Park. And this question is going to be Carew Manor, where the head of Sir Walter Raleigh Holmes. What is it now? You can make a little donation if you want, or don't make a little donation. If you make a donation and type your answer in the chat, then you will have a chance of winning something interesting, okay? So the question is, what is now in Carew Manor? Okay, so we're going to continue. Everything changed, ladies and gentlemen, when Queen Victoria became the Queen of England. Queen Victoria became the Queen when she was not like this. When she was much younger, she became the Queen. It was in 1837, and she was just 18-year-old. When she was 20, she married this very, very romantic man. And the name of this man is Prince Albert, Queen Victoria's beloved husband. So Victoria used to love Carew Manor because it inspired to her so many good memories and such a romantic place reminding of Tudors. So Victoria was a great lover of follies. In case you don't remember what folly is when something from the past comes here, like me, the royal executioner. No, I'm only joking. The royal follies are the buildings of Chinese houses or little semi-destructed castles put in the park to make it more beautiful. So away from my face and look at the building that I'm showing to you. This is the Royal China House. Well, Victorians in the 19th century, they were obsessed with Oriental things, and the Chinese houses were put all over the place. all over the place. So this is one of them. And in a moment I'm going to turn around and to see the lake which flows into the river Wandle, a beautiful river which we will see little later. So Queen Victoria improved this place. She made a few trips to Beddington and she made it really, really beautiful. This is Queen Victoria's husband, Prince Albert. Prince Albert was also the man who in 1851 arranged the great exhibition in Hyde Park. We're far away from Hyde Park. We're 20 kilometers more or less from Hyde Park now in South London. But this was arranged by Prince Albert. However, Prince Albert passed away. He died aged 41. So Queen Victoria was heartbroken. She decided to retire to Scotland and she spent 11 years in Scotland crying about Prince Albert. However, the views of Beddington Park Natural Reserve remained forever in her heart. Okay, so we're going to cross back the bridge in company of Queen Victoria, who gave the name to the Victorian age. Charles Dickens, Charles Darwin, and many, many other interesting characters are called the Great Victorians. So it's not just about Tudors. By the way, Beddington Park is a constantly developing park, and we're looking at a place called Fernery. Fernery is the place where they used to grow and still grow ferns, the oldest plants in the earth. It's winter now, but this is what the place looks right now in Beddington Park, the Royal Fernery. And if you want to have a look how it looked like before in the Victorian age, this is the picture of it. So it's a big hothouse, and this is what it should be looking like, with lots of pubs and firms and everything. Okay, so we're going to cross now the bridge again, and I'm going to ask you my next question. And the question is, what's the name of the river behind me? Okay, what's the name of the river that flows into a lake, into Beddington Park? Okay, so continuing our journey through Tudors. Tudors came into the English throne in the end of 15th century, and you're looking at right now at the bridge and also at the Tudor crest. So the War of the Roses, the white rose married the red rose, and this is how the War of the Roses finished with the Tudor dynasty. But the Tudor dynasty, ladies and gentlemen, is the dynasty coming from, well, we can say abroad. It comes from a beautiful place called Wales. Wales, I'm going to show you the map. Yes. Don't pay attention to the phrase, guess where the boy came from. Well, that was about Anthony Hopkins, because he came from Wales, just from a PowerPoint. Okay, so imagine the War of the Roses is about to finish, and 53-year-old king, so you can see his portrait here, marries 13-year-old princess. Well, please don't wow, because that was quite a common case. Her name was Catherine of Valois, and his name was King Henry VIII. Sorry, not the 8th, Henry V. That was before Tudors. And after 2 or 3 years of marriage, this man passes away, and look at her. She is a beautiful 20-something widow and dressed all in white, because the white color was the color of mourning. He goes into Leeds Castle. Just on the right hand side of her, in my picture, you can see it. And the royal gardener meets her. And it's a beautiful love story. "What's your name?" asks the queen to the royal gardener. And the royal gardener says, "Well, my queen, my name won't tell you anything, because it's not known at all. My name is Owen, and my last name is Tudor." So the widowed queen fell in love with the royal gardener, and they gave birth to a boy, okay? And that boy was the father of King Henry VII and the grandfather of King Henry VIII. Just showing you some beautiful summer pictures of Leeds Castle. When you come to London, and I think that will happen very, very soon, maybe this year, maybe next year, you will see these beautiful roses, and maybe one day we will do a tour from Leeds Castle as well. But we are now in Beddington Park. So this is Henry VII, the dad of King Henry VIII, and next to him Elizabeth of York, the mom of King Henry VIII. She comes from the house of the White Rose, the house of York, and he claims to come from the house of the Red Rose. And the man wearing black bonnet with a flower here is Richard III, the famous wicked King Richard III. Okay, so we are walking now to another park. I hope you don't mind. I hope you're not cold, are you? I'm a bit cold, but you are not, hopefully. And leaving Beddington Park, I'm asking you another question. And this question is going to be, how big is Beddington Park? So you can answer this question in the chat. If you make a little donation, your name will be entered into competition for a chance of winning a prize. But as I'm the royal executioner, we are not talking about the prize. We are walking to Carshalton Park, and we are talking about the methods of execution. By the way, this is the picture from the National Gallery. I'm wearing the collar same as the executioner who is handling Jesus Christ there. Okay, I'm giving you, while I'm walking to Carshalton Park, I'm going to give you a little view of modern day London. I'm a ghost, but I like walking in the modern 21st century London. Off we go. Okay, so the methods of execution. First of all, there were methods of execution of poor people, or somebody who stole a loaf of bread, for example. Look at these beautiful houses. And there were methods of execution of the nobility. Usually, if poor people were executed, the executioner was the royal butcher. Excuse my French, yes, the royal butcher. And if noble people were executed, that was also anonymous executioner. So sometimes people ask, what's the name of the executioner who executed Anne Boleyn? And the answer is not known, usually known as the Sword of Calais. I am the Sword of Calais. Here we go. And I'm even carrying a little sword. I'll show you later. It's too wet now. Okay. So, usually, when people were being executed, they were executed up in London, not here. Noble people at the Tower of London. So Queen Anne Boleyn lost her head in the Tower of London, and the other people were executed in a place called Marble Arch, and usually they were executed by hanging. Yes. Okay, so when poor people were executed by hanging, there was room for 12 people to be executed, okay? But they would bring always 13 executioners. Why is that? Because they would say, we don't have a professional executioner. So if one of you can volunteer and execute the rest of them, then your life will be spared. Of course, that was not the case of the noble people. Noble people were executed by sword, and if executioner was a professional one, then they would be executed very quickly, like Anne Boleyn. I have a very thin neck, said Queen Anne Boleyn when she knelt at the Tower of London. And look at these houses here I'm showing you right now, guys. Look at them. They're modern houses in England. If you want to buy one of them, you will pay $1 million. Well, I'm traducing it into US dollars. You can translate it how you want. They're very interesting, these houses, and they're called Tudor style houses, even if they were built when Beatles were singing in London. And we are in the Royal Borough of Sutton right now, going towards Carshalton Park. So coming back to executions, Anne Boleyn said, I have a very thin neck, and she was executed very, very swiftly. Of course, all people who were being executed, I'm not talking about noble one, but might have been a case of a noble one as well, they were given a chance to have a drink before the execution. Not just one drink, but plenty of them. And in a little moment, after I've crossed the road, I'm going to show you the pub. The history of the British pubs is very, very, very interesting, because pub translates into, not translate into, sorry. The pub is transcribed as public house, because in the old days, poor people were not allowed in the restaurant. Let me just cross the road a little bit. Just be very careful. We don't want any new ghosts, huh? In the London Borough of Wallington. I'm already one. Right. So the pub I'm going to show you is a very cool one. It's in a cool place next to a beautiful lake. It's called the Rose and the Crown. The pub itself is not very old, but it stands on the spot where Queen Anne Boleyn horse stumbled and she met King Henry VIII. Away from me and onto the pub. This is the Rose and Crown, Carshalton, the beautiful pub. Do you remember when we were in Carew Manor? I told you about King Henry meeting Anne Boleyn there. Well, according to a legend, that was the place where Anne Boleyn met King Henry VIII, although it is disputed and being said Greenwich was the place where they met. Well, pub is public house. Poor people were not admitted into restaurant. Only wealthy people were admitted into restaurant, but pub would admit everyone. and pubs are symbol of England. So we're very near our next destination, Carshalton Park. We're leaving the borough of Wallington. By the way, the name of this place is Wallington. It comes from the old Anglo-Saxonic well, the place of the wells, maybe related to this pub that we can see now. Sorry, a little bit shaky. And we are now going to Carshalton, the place of the watercress. Okay, maybe better this way. At least it's not raining how it used to be at the beginning of our tour. So when you come to the English pub, you ask for a pint or a half, and you usually ask for the ale. At the moment the pubs are closed, but we are hoping in April for Easter reopening them. So look at that, what a beautiful place is behind me. The Rose and the Crown, typical English pub. Well, hopefully one day we will be able to have a good pint there and watch sports maybe. And according to a legend, the first pub was founded in England in 1662 after the English Civil War by the King Charles II. But that story has nothing to do with the Tudors. Okay, a little walk through the modern, it's quite windy, through the modern town. If you look here, you can see food, beer and live sports. And it's getting dark because it's winter. It's getting dark because it's winter. So we are now walking through London, through one of the London modern streets, and the next park is the Carshalton Park. I'm going to show you little houses which don't cost $500,000 like the ones I showed you before, but showing you the other houses. And many people ask me when they come to London, why do people drive on the left here? Well, to be honest with you, there is no explanation why in England we drive on the left. Some people say that was the way the Romans drove there. Other people say different story. Well, I'm going to tell you a different story. The first rules of traffic appeared after the Napoleonic Wars, okay? And during the Napoleonic Wars, the first people who introduced the rules of traffic, they were the French people, yeah? And they said, from 1920, we are going to drive on the right. And the English people, who always wanted to spite the French, however, they invited always the French executioners, like myself, they started to drive on the left. So the questions, why we drive on the right, on the left in England, and the drive is always right, it's quite easy to answer. So I'm walking a bit fast, and while we're walking here might be a bit boring for you. So I'm going to show you Sir Nicholas Carew, who was the owner of Carew Manor we were talking about. Oh, sorry, this is Francis Bacon, the one who froze the chicken. Sorry, not Sir Nicholas Carew, Francis Bacon, the inventor of the frozen chicken. And this man is finally the knight Sir Nicholas Carew, who also was executed. There is an interesting legend that tells us that Sir Nicholas Carew was quite a stingy man, and there was a tradition before the execution. You handle to your executioner a bag of gold or a bag of silver. Well, Sir Nicholas Carew didn't want to handle anything to me, his executioner, and he said, just chop my head off. It does not matter. Well, it did matter at the end, because I took 13 times to chop Sir Nicholas Carew's head with my very, very blunt sword. Okay, so Sir Nicholas Carew, Walter Raleigh, who was the pirate of Queen Elizabeth I, whose head haunts Carew Manor, and finally, please meet the favorite wife of King Henry VIII. Her name is Jane Seymour, and she was the only one who gave the baby boy who survived. By the way, King Henry VIII and herself is buried in Windsor, also about 20 miles from central London. This is King Henry VIII we were talking about. And the ghost of Anne Boleyn haunts Carew Manor, even if she died at the Tower of London. I'm just going past the leisure centre where myself, the Royal Executioner, practice chopping the heads, and in a little moment we will finish our broadcast, but I still want to show you something a little bit interesting in Carshalton Park. That's a beautiful picture I took yesterday, not far from where I live, well, from where I haunt, sorry. This is the rainbow above the houses in South London. Okay, so we are now entering our last park and nearly end of the tour of South London Ghost. This is Carshalton Park. Carshalton Park. This is Carshalton Park. It's getting dark, and I'm going to repeat my questions here in Carshalton Park. Maybe when we get to the lake, maybe a little bit before we get to the lake, so I'm putting the camera back to me. So the first question of this quiz is, who was Sir Walter Raleigh? And I'm not telling you the answer. The second one was, what was Carew Manor? What is now Carew Manor? Sorry, not what is now Carew Manor. The third question is, how big is Beddington Park? The fourth one, what's the name of the river that runs through Beddington Park? And the last question is the most obvious, but maybe not. How did Sir Walter Raleigh, who haunts Carew Manor, die? So that's the question. So the promised thing, I'm just going into to get the view of the park. Sorry, a little bit shaky. So I'm going to say goodbye to you for now. The Royal Executioner is trying to show you his sword, but because it's too windy, it's not. It might not be possible. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and I hope to see you for one other tour. Many thanks, and God save the Queen.